At least with my fight, we're gonna like.
I don't know how you guys end up using it. Good to see you too. Good. I miss all like having youth services. Yeah, I'm working with Danielle. Good to see you. Oh, I know. I missed you too. Thank you. Working out. And they do Linda. It's been so cool. Like similar like
I just logged in just to double check.
They can take it.
The next stage of evolution. Also, probably why they went extinct. Tacos are delicious.
He is seems like he's in like your guys' position.
Sometimes, so I can like make it through a year, and then I know around December I'll be like stocked up.
It's a little hard to tell. Everybody has like different titles.
I'm all about various combinations. When I tell my kids like if they're wearing mismatched socks, they're teaming up. So it's okay to have a Yoda teaming up with a Ninja Turtle because they would be really awesome. So it's already mismatched socks, and I'm not above using the logic for my socks.
It was really fun.
Tacosaurus and a rainbow. It's all great things. It's all great things.
My kids are very like
First and fourth grade.
Yeah. You like men?
Fourth grade seems like it's like up there. I'm like, she might as well be in college.
You know what's weird?
Well, they said that they made announcements like everybody in the state that
Okay.
selected.
I always like, I try not to like think too much about it because it does kind of like go into like a weird dark place. Where I'm just like,
Okay.
so you've maybe been out of the house for a year already, possibly who knows if this
already talking about it. No, it's like, hold on, I'm gonna go to pictures anyway. I'm like, oh, okay. So I
we
don't
haven't gotten to that point yet, but they're like, believe me, they're still
I'm really excited.
I'll be like, it's okay, Dad, when I'm your age, I don't know if I'll have kids, because I'll still live here. Well, that's something that inspires me, son. I'm always clear. I'm like, well, my parents deal was if I lived at home after high school, I could live there for free if I was in college, and if I wasn't, if you're 35 and still live here, then we definitely have
In retrospect, it wouldn't have worked, so I'm glad I came home when I did. But I wish that I would have had a flight. But oh, you guys don't like taking Ubers at night? Like,
yeah.
I don't know, it sketches me out. So I for sure was like, I'm gonna die.
For half a year, my first year of college, and that was nuts because I was in August and I was like,
Thank you for all of
driving here and going.
keeping me in line.
You're that one.
Put a face to it now. It's nice to meet you. All over. Okay.
And like, he uses it to someone else like a I'll hit up her. I really think you're like. I said, yes. Because we're like, how can we get there? It's like,
like
the parents
She bites.
Oh yeah.
secondary attendance, right? And they stay out. Plus, we had, I have my assistant plan because she on the same, and so she's not like a whole bunch of like she's gonna leave us already.
Let's take a look, do my rounds.
Okay. Obviously, your mom.
And Curtis and Ryan,
Here we are.
whenever I moved to this area, I tried to like
plus then here, I don't have a secretary right now. Those are usually like, I'm like 40 hours.
Change everything up.
oh, I know. I like saw pictures. Yes, I haven't been to such a good meal chain. Yeah, I saw where you were at. Hat on.
Here's all Friday.
It's so smart though.
Yeah, so more fun, but you're yeah, and this is kind of where this.
Some of the applied for my family's visa, but I don't have as much. It was good for mine.
Did you run out of characters or something? There's like a million
I guess.
always had the feedback that they felt like they just like couldn't continue on with the
Yeah. It's always a scramble. I guess it is during the school year too.
lessons. Like
It's getting more like
Yeah. Yeah, awesome. Super excited.
Yeah.
also very cool to go out of town like every year and like a week and one trips. Gonna go to your nice. I'm going to write list.
How was that? What Joe?
Almost so.
Teacher.
Are you gonna come in and actually? Oh, fun! Yeah.
After school. Terrible. Did you get like a fair like grade?
I feel like everybody else is terrible.
Well, would they have kids?
We have one leader, one permanent. Last year. I were like, I had tears coming out of my eyes. So we were like,
It was like, wait,
it was so good.
They have to talk to this guy.
Hey, how are you?
The thing about it is that also like it's the only one that really knows. I mean, it's not very broad in there for no reason. Really like because they came together to work on the team. They all saw the vision. Like, anyway, that's really getting that getting other people to know, like.
Somebody else
So I can see like how like
I'm asking people about
Well, that's talking yeah, because that's been a big
well, you know when you like go to their site and like everything okay, we're gonna get started. Come together. Just so excited to see one another. Settle. So thank you all for being here today. I'm Phil Sheik. I'm with the Utah State Board of Education. You're all here for the 21st Century Community Learning Center grant orientation. So we have people in the room who've been doing this for many, many years. This is your old, you're used to this. And then we have some new grantees who aren't, familiar with all the grant requirements. So we like to have an annual orientation so we can go over all the information. It's just a refresher for some of you, but new information for others. So thank you for being here. And just as a reminder, this is being recorded. So, and you'll see these different cameras. They kind of go towards where the sound is. So sometimes you have a side conversation. A lot of you are here with your other staff. It will zoom in on you and kind of pick up what you're discussing. So just a reminder, technology isn't perfect. So keep that in mind. So this is my contact information. I have a few people here with me who help support this grant as well. Robert Palmer. He also oversees the IGP grant, the Program Quality Enhancement grant, and the Partnership for Student Success grant. And then two people from our fiscal team, Tammy Long and Sandra Grant, will answer all your questions about reimbursements, Utah grants, time and effort, all that fun stuff. So before we get into the meat of everything, Darren Nielsen, who's our Assistant Superintendent of Student Learning, would like to provide you with some information about state assessment, answer any questions you have about that. So we're very happy to have him here with us today. He has a few slides that he's going to go over. So this is now your opportunity to ask questions about that and get an update. So which slideshow was it?
Oh yeah. All right, again, my name is Darren Nielsen. I've worked with the State Board of Education for 22 months now, which down here sometimes that feels like a long time. But I've enjoyed my opportunity to work at the state level for the State Board of Education. Prior to that, I worked in Box Elder School District, so the Boys and Girls Club from the Brigham City area. I love. We have a relationship there, and they do a lot of great things in Box Elder County. Just a couple days ago, I sent out an email to all of the staff here at the State Board and an invitation for me to come to their presentations, the groups that they work with, and talk about state assessment, if they would like me to. And this group responded very quickly, Camille. In fact, I had asked it within 24 hours. We've got a meeting. You come to it. I'm grateful to be with you today. I also sensitive to the fact that some of you might not be as concerned about state assessment as other groups that I'll present to, but you've probably seen in the media last year's delivery of the statewide standards assessment, also known as RISE. We had some problems with our vendor. The data then that we get from that, we administered tests to, we administered almost 1 million tests last year through that vendor for students in grades 3 through 8. And through your grants, if I understand correctly, you use data from that assessment or assessments like that to measure the effect of your programs. And so that's why I guess it would be important for me to be able to talk to you. I'm going to, at a high level, just talk about questions that I get. And these slides come from a presentation I gave to the Education Interim Committee at the Capitol last week. These are just a few of the slides that I talked about. But it's important to understand on the RISE test, it is developed in accordance to statute. So people will say, how come we administer this test? Or how come this test changed? The blueprint or the framework of that assessment that we administer to our students in grades 3 through 8 comes from this statute. And it tells us very specifically what has to happen, including that it's a criterion reference test and that it's computer adaptive. When we deal with a vendor, there we go. When we deal with a vendor to deliver the state standards assessment, prior to RISE it was SAGE. We used the American Institute of Research, AIR, to deliver that. We go through a procurement process. What we purchase from the vendor is not the test itself. In Utah, we've developed the test questions that are aligned with our Utah core over the last 6 years with Utah teachers. Teams of teachers get together every year, do item writing. And there's a significant effort to make sure those assessment questions are, number one, aligned to the Utah core, so they're measuring what they're supposed to, that it goes through a bias and sensitivity review. And it also considers depth of knowledge, rigor associated with the question. The questions that we've written in Utah are high value. We've leased these items to other states who don't have either the will or the capacity to write their own test questions, that just buy them from vendors. And so it's important for the general public to know when they have concerns about the RISE test or any testing in our state, specifically this one. These questions have been vetted very thoroughly, more thoroughly than any questions that teachers get out of their curriculum item bank or off of websites, Teacher Pay Teacher, or even the ones that they write, because they don't have the expertise or the time and resources to be able to validate and verify those questions the way that we do for the state standards test. So what we buy from the vendor is their delivery system. We have our questions. So people will say to me, how come the RISE test is still called the RISE test this year? Isn't it just rebranding something? And I'll say no, because the RISE test is essentially the questions that we have. And what we're purchasing from AIR, which we previously tried to purchase from Questar that they unsuccessfully delivered, was the system. So they provide the interface, the software, the servers, and they bring some psychometric expertise to the state to help us in our item writing in the process of getting questions from an idea stage to the written stage to all through the verification stage to the test itself. So that's, again, some of you are thinking, this isn't really relevant to me, but when people say, isn't it just the same test? The answer to that is yes. The test questions we've had in Utah for 6 years now. So in your programs, when you say, can we compare our data to previous years, Utah is unique in the sense of, because all states change their assessment platforms, or the statutes associated with them change, or they change their standards, so the questions change. In Utah, for math and language arts, we've had the same standards and the same questions for now 6 years. And when we talk about longitudinal data and being able to measure what's the effect of programs, that's a real asset that the state of Utah has. We would have the same case in science, but the science standards in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade were updated a few years ago. So last year was our first testing cycle with those new questions. So we went through emergency procurement. Again, this probably isn't as relevant to you. On August 1st, the board approved a new contract with the AIR And we will begin delivering assessments on October 1st in the state of Utah again. The full suite of formative and summative assessments will be available this year, and they'll be back in play. Impact of the data. So this might be something that's more relevant to you as you try to determine what kind of data can we use to measure the impacts of our programs in our communities. So because of some irregularities in the administration of the 2019 RISE assessments, we had the 5 interruptions of service that were in the media. If any of you watched the news, you saw that there were some days when testing got shut down for the full day. We had those 5 things. We had some other irregularities in what should be a standardized administration delivery system. Because of that, we have additional research that we have to do to determine whether the 2019 data can be used for accountability and can be used in this comparative analysis for now would be the 6th year, being able to look at the data and the trend lines. So we have several studies that we have ongoing. The vendor themselves were required to do a analysis of the impact of their interruption of service, those 5 days where testing got shut down or interrupted significantly, and it has to be validated by a third party. They were responsible originally to provide that to us by August 30th. They're going to miss that deadline, but they will provide it to us by September 9th. We have internally and with some LEA representatives from Salt Lake School District and also Jordan School District doing analysis of the data internally, and we'll complete that by September 9th. And then we have the Center for Assessment, which is a nationally recognized organization. They're doing a study on growth calculation to see if we continue to calculate growth scores, or whether we have to start with a new baseline. That will be completed by September 9th. Once we have those analyses done, there are several groups that we'll go through with the data. So the first one is this APAC, Assessment Accountability Policy Advisory Committee. That's a board-appointed committee, and some of the people in your organizations might be on that group. On September 10th, they will review the analysis of all those studies and make recommendations to the board about whether the data can be used for accountability and also for comparative analysis for the previous year. So again, it's important to you guys with your grants to know if that data source can be considered true. Then we have a technical advisory committee that involves professors from several universities across the country who come in annually and meet with us 3 times a year. On the 11th and 12th of September, they also will review that analysis. And then finally, the State Board of Education, which has authority for making supervisory decisions about education in the state of Utah, on October 3rd is scheduled to review those reports, the recommendations, and make a determination about that data. Probably the biggest question I get in my world, can we use the data? And if we can or can't, then what's the next option? So those answers will come into more clarity after October 3rd. So then the data, again, I'll go through this just because it might be interesting to some of you and also could impact your programs. We had 5 days of interruption service. About 20,000 students a day were involved in testing during those times. The interesting thing is these tests are designed to be able to be administered over multiple days anyway. So I don't anticipate those will have a significant impact on the outcomes. On the contrast, if we were administering the ACT and it had an interruption of service where it's designed to be delivered in a battery in a short time, a time test, then we would have more significant problems. But this test is actually designed to be administered over multiple days if the student wants to, and there's not a time constraint on it. We had 466 students who weren't able to complete the test, and their LEA gave them this code that excuses them from accountability system because of the problems with the Questar system. And then we still have 3,546 tests out of about a million, so the n size on that is really small in the big picture, that we don't have a score for the student and we don't have a participation code. So those are things that we continue to investigate. Again, we had 984,000 total test event records. 95.4% of those have expected records like we would think. The next question that people will ask me is, what about opt-out? In Utah, we're a parental rights state, and we have provisions that allow parents to exclude their students for participation in state accountability assessments. We don't have the final numbers on that. A year ago, we had a 5.4% statewide opt-out rate. So you can see that number. Just opt-out alone puts us into this range. This year, we expect our opt-out rate, looking at the preliminary numbers, is around 3.5%. So we had a significant decline in the number of parents who chose to exclude their students from the opt-out or from the statewide assessment system. We call that noise. It's noise in our data. It can interfere with the accuracy of it. So the number of that noise, the amount of that noise is really reduced just by the bringing in additional kids into the accountability system that previously excluded themselves. Short-term contract, we don't need to worry about that. Assurances, so you guys probably aren't that interested in that. How we're confident the AIR will be the appropriate vendor moving forward. Are there questions that this group I can address related to statewide testing or the data analysis?
So can we access that by school? Like, we can pull just a school and just an age group in that school, or is it?
Yeah, so eventually, once we get through the analysis and we present it to the board, let's assume best case scenario, they say, yep, it's good, we can use it for accountability. Then there's a process that gets loaded into our data gateway,
Right.
which is where your schools, there's a public portion of that you as external partners might already be familiar with, to go in and drill down and look at schools, student groups, student populations. That process will be delayed, obviously, because of these issues.
But it will still go to that far.
Right now, we're scheduled to publish the school report cards, which all this would have to, the data gateway would have to be updated prior to that on December 1st of 2019. Okay. If there's nothing else, I'll let you get back to what you're really.
So much, Darren.
Okay.
Very helpful.
Now.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Now we're going to have Natay come and talk about student and family rights, including all students in your program, what that looks like. Oh yeah, we have another one. Perfect.
So I was asked to talk a little bit just about inclusion and my role at the State Board of Education. I work in student support and I formerly did a lot of stuff with dispute resolution and the IDEA, but now I work with the whole team. And so that includes our 504 person, Holly Bell, and I've included our information at the end of this because what I was asked to do is just a quick, brief sum up. And I know many of your questions when I get calls have to do with particular student situations or particular things you might run up against. And so in the interest of time, I want you to reach out if you have follow-up questions after this. So what I wanted to talk about today is just inclusion and how that pertains to after-school programming. And I'm assuming you all know what inclusion means. But just from a legal standpoint, inclusion means that our students with disabilities are included in the same space and the same programming as students who do not have disabilities. And sometimes making that same space and same programming work needs help. You need help. You need accommodations. You may need to make modifications. But the goal is that we need to include students in the same way. It means treating students the same as much as possible, understanding there may be some accommodations and modifications that they qualify for because of their disability. That would mean we treat them a little different, but it's to allow them to have access. And for me, the purpose of the special education laws and the civil rights federal laws is really what benefits come from inclusion. And we all benefit from living in an inclusive society and running an inclusive program, but particularly for our students with disabilities,
they gain a lot of great benefits. One of the neat things about extracurricular or after-school activities, non-academic activities, is they may get to interact with students and adults that they don't usually interact with during the school day. And another huge piece for kids with disabilities is these opportunities allow them to develop skills that they need and that all kids need in terms of, I just put some up there, but greater self-awareness, self-confidence, appropriate social and emotional skills. 50 years ago, we had a system in this country that excluded kids with disabilities. And what the research shows, as well as what we know about civil rights, is that folks with disabilities cannot develop the skills they need to succeed, thrive in society if they don't have opportunities to be around their peers without disabilities. That is the best way to acquire those skills. And so it's the law, but there's also a lot of good reasons why kids with disabilities need to be included. So what laws come into play? And I included hyperlinks, so this could be sent to you after, that would take you to Department of Education websites that would tell you a little bit more, but you can also always call me. The ones that you're going to hear about the most are Americans with Disabilities Act and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. And the quick way to remember that is those are both civil rights laws that prohibit discrimination. And so when you're thinking about activities your program is doing, we want to avoid discriminating against students on the basis of their disability, and it's because it ties in to those two laws. And so what the laws require is that we make reasonable accommodations to things like physical layout, rules, policies, or practices that may have a discriminatory impact. The other law that you've maybe heard of a lot in the context of school is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And that is what we call an entitlement law. So civil rights laws prohibit discrimination. Entitlement under IDEA means that students are entitled to certain supports and services. And something that schools and families sometimes miss or aren't aware of is that that includes kids being able to access non-academic and extracurricular activities and receive supports in order to do so. And so we're going to chat real briefly about how things we can do to adhere to these laws. So in terms of when we're looking at Section 04 and the ADA, which are those civil rights laws, we want to make sure that we're providing equal access and opportunities for students. That sometimes will mean we're making individualized determinations about what a student may need to be successful in your program. We need to make reasonable accommodations, and I've got some examples a little bit later of what that looks like. We need to avoid eligibility criteria that would screen out our students with disabilities. We need to make sure our facilities are physically accessible, and I think that's not as huge of a problem if you're using a school or different settings, because they typically have been, but still something to pay attention to. And then prohibiting retaliation against an individual with disabilities, and that includes that individual's parent. So if a parent files a complaint or accesses one of their rights under the law for dispute resolution, we don't treat them differently because they were accessing that right. So again, I'm going to touch on IEPs in a minute, but an IEP is an individualized education program. That's something that the student, parent, and the school team will make to support students who are protected under the IDEA. And schools are required as part of that IEP process to consider supports and accommodations a student might need to participate in those non-academic and extracurricular activities. And so that should be in their plan, and that should be a consideration for students. So I wanted to just include some examples of what barriers to inclusion might look like in an after-school context. And these are based on different cases and different things that have happened out there in the nation, not necessarily here. But I do get calls occasionally about things such as we discourage enrollment, or we don't allow a student to enroll because of their particular disability. We refuse to accept a child into the program without giving the family any reason. That's troubling. We've had some programs tell parents they can't provide a particular accommodation. And again, if you get requests or you're thinking through things, please reach out to somebody, either your legal counsel or call the USBE for some technical assistance, because what the law does require is reasonable accommodations. So there are some things a family could ask for that would not be required by the law. It depends on you understanding what reasonable accommodations are versus something that would be a fundamental alteration to your program, to throw in a little legal term. And then seeking to remove a child from the program for reasons associated with his or her disability. This is when I run up against a lot with behavioral challenges, behavior concerns. And so again, this is one where you would want to collaborate with a team. But if those behaviors are connected to the student's disability, we want to make sure they're receiving accommodations and supports before we exclude them from a program. So as I was thinking about just a quick takeaway for you, I wanted you to know that many of these students do have a plan. They may have an IEP, they may have a 504 plan. Some students don't need the full extent of special education services that a student with an IEP would need. What a 504 plan is more about is just accommodations, not as much services. And I've got an example somewhere in here of accommodations. It may be confusing if you don't have a lot of background, but visit those websites. But this idea that these students have plans that a school and a parent have worked on. We also know, and you're probably seeing in your programs, some of our students have allergies or medical needs, and they may have a healthcare plan. Some of these students may just have an independent healthcare plan, like our kids with diabetes or asthma or something. Other kiddos may have a healthcare plan that connects to either of these plans. And so I want you to know about that, because if that's in play, we want to make sure that we're using the information and the supports in that plan in the programming that you're doing, and that you coordinate with the folks who are administering this plan, because otherwise we're doing a lot of extra work and we're miscommunicating or not coordinating, and these plans can give you a lot of information. Yes?
So on SIS, there is an area where it shows whether or not a child has an IEP or a 504. That information is not always entered. Mm-hmm. And where we serve 600 students, whose responsibility is it to ensure that the after-school coordinators have this information not posted on the information system that the schools are using, and the teachers wouldn't know which of their students are in the after-school program? What is the legal connection there? If we don't know, if we don't have the information, and
if you don't know, there's not a responsibility. Okay. But that said, what I would hope is that we work with our schools to ensure that they have that information updated, knowing that you need that as well. I avoided going into too many nuances, because some of it goes to if the program is happening at a school site. I would say it is the school's responsibility to ensure, especially with the kids with IEPs, that's a stronger obligation because it's supposed to be addressed in their plan. 504 and 88 apply to any publicly funded program. So, but that said, you can't provide accommodations if you don't know about a disability. So if you didn't have notice in the SIS system, your obligation would just be triggered if a parent let you know that there was a disability and student needed accommodations. But I don't know as much about your programming, but whatever communication is happening with the school, I think that's a huge piece to have at the beginning of the school year. Like, we need to know this because we want our students to be successful, and you play a role in sharing information with us. And along those lines, I had another slide. I didn't get a chance to chat with you ahead of time, but FERPA or, Family Education Privacy Records Act comes into play. And I wasn't sure if you all have formal agreements in terms of that. And so schools can share that information with you with parent consent. And so that's probably a conversation that would need to happen too. For example, if a parent told you, my student has a disability, or you see they have an IEP, we either need to look and see if we have a formal agreement to share that, or we need to get parent consent and say, parent, it would help me so much if I could chat with school staff about your student's 504 IEP so we can make sure we're using accommodations and supports that are effective and consistent with what they're getting during the school day.
So 504s just can occur anytime throughout the year. A child breaks their leg or something happens and they have to have 504. Again, if we're not informed that this is happening, or it's not checked on the SIS box or whatever, then we're not held.
Yes.
Is that the bottom line with that?
Yeah, you need to be made aware of a student's disability. And just to clarify, sometimes a broken bone doesn't necessarily translate into this. There's medical needs sometimes that may apply here in healthcare. Yeah. So it's just, a lot of it's communication and information sharing. And I couldn't get into all the nuances, but I think it's important for you to know that parent consent, parent communication is the key to work with the school to understand support needs that a student has.
Maybe one thing that we could all think about is on our registration form asking, is your child on an IEP, is your child on a 504? Yes,
Well, that's another piece we need to be careful about, because we don't want to, and I didn't get a chance. I was thinking through this last night, and I'm like, there's murky legal issues that come in, but usually we do not ask that because a parent may be reluctant to identify that for fear their child may be excluded from the program. And so a lot of the guidance that I found online talks about, don't ask specifically whether they have a disability, but you can ask if they have needs or support needs or other things that would be helpful for you to know about to serve their student. So in terms of information gained from parent, I would not ask if they have an IEP or a 504, but if you're working with the school and they can share just that information that student does, I just wasn't sure what the agreements are in terms of information sharing and consent. Okay, so that's something we may need to look into and just provide additional support moving forward, because every situation's a little different. Good questions. You led us right to where we need to go. So the takeaway I wanted you to have today is just that piece of collaboration and consistency. There are times where it may be appropriate for you to be a part of the 504 team or the IEP team, depending on the level of students' involvement and parent being okay with you coming. I often find that training can be very helpful. I know that we've got different types of staff. Some people have a lot of experience working with kids with disabilities. Others don't have very much experience. And honestly, the majority of kiddos to participate, it's not a huge lift. It's not that difficult. It just requires kind of a change in mindset and an awareness. And I always say, for me, inclusion, the biggest barriers are our own preconceptions and our attitudes across the country, because we're problem solvers as educators and people who work with kids. And if we approach something with the mindset of how can we include this kiddo, we can figure it out in most cases, and we're here to help you do that. So I wanted to just help us be proactive. If you've got a kiddo that you can already see some behavior challenges might be arising, don't wait until someone gets hurt or until things escalate like crazy. Let's put our heads together. Let's communicate with parent and other appropriate folks to get plans in place so that we can support students in their needs.
I have a question.
Yes.
So with regard to the transportation, for example, our program, we transport a student from school and then if, for example, we have a student who can ride in regular van or in a bus, and what can we, and if we don't have it, so would that be reasonable not to accept the student because we know?
We need to accept them, so I think what we would need to do is do some problem solving about how the school district or other supports in the community provide accessible transportation. Great question. Other questions? Okay, so this is what I touched on already, so just be aware of that, and I included a link there. I wanted you to have some resources because I knew my presentation would be short. That said, at the top, I want you to rely on LEA or school administrators. I work a lot with the special ed directors in each district, but student support services or 504 coordinators, they do a lot with our 504 students. And those folks have expertise. They often are aware of the student or the setting that you're working in. Please reach out to them for help because they would like to support you. I've also included, most of these are guidance documents that come from the East Coast because I worked in the East Coast and sometimes they have more litigation than we do. So we don't always have documents created, but these were, one came from New Jersey, Maryland, and New York, and I felt gave a lot of good information in terms of after-school programs and kind of those legal implications in an understandable way because they were not drafted by the state boards of ed. They were drafted by like disability advocacy groups geared toward parents. So they're really understandable. And then I wanted you to be aware that in Utah we have this manual called the Least Restrictive Behavior Interventions Manual, and it has a lot of great resources that if you're facing some challenging behaviors, there's a lot of great links and ideas for behavior interventions, which is what I see come up a lot when I'm getting calls from after school programs. So this is Holly's info. She couldn't come today, but you can reach out to her, you can reach out to me, and we're both happy to help support you. So, yeah.
Are those links, do we have those in writing anywhere? Or
We'll make sure everyone gets the PowerPoint.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. I was late in sending it to her. So,
thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Those questions about registration forms and any other, things that come up in your program specifically. So now we're going to have Kathleen Mogg from the Child Nutrition Program go over how you could potentially be reimbursed for snack, for dinner. Amanda Neal was scheduled to present. You have her contact information, so if you have specific questions, you could reach out to Amanda or anyone from the Child Nutrition team.
All right, good morning, everyone. Congratulations on receiving this grant. It's pretty amazing. But I want to kind of just give a brief overview of the child nutrition programs. So we are actually funded by the USDA. So we are just the state agency that operates that funding here in Utah, and other states it's by U.S. Department of Ag or wherever else that the state deems. We're just here housed at the Utah State Board of Education. So if you ever need to, you can always pop in. We're on the second floor, so you can always come and say hi in our mess of a situation that's happening right now with our cubes. With that being said, you do have Amanda Neal's contact, but we are switching roles around in our department because we are restructuring. So with that being said, on your handout in your packets, and if you don't have any, I have more available. It has our main line on there and our main email. So please contact us through these if you can't get a hold of Amanda Neal, and we'll be happy to get back with you. One thing to note, if you did mention on your grant that you would participate in providing a healthy, nutritious meal or snack, I would highly encourage you to go through our programs for that, for the reimbursement. I know that you have limited funds with this grant, right? Most of this grant funds are going to be used for salaries, to make sure that you have enough staff, to making sure that you're purchasing the supplies that you need for the programs that you're providing. So why waste these grant funds on meals or snacks when you could be getting reimbursement for those funds through our program? There is not a limit to how many snacks or meals that you can serve on reimbursement. It's just however many you serve, you get reimbursed for. The main purpose of the programs of the child nutrition was actually founded in the late 40s. It actually comes from World War II because of the draft that was happening. They were turning away too many potential soldiers because they didn't have proper nutrition growing up, and they were too weak to enter into the armed forces for World War II. So Congress decided something needed to happen, right? We needed to make sure that our kids were more healthy, that they were getting the proper nutrition. And that's where our programs came from. It also came from making sure and trying to ensure that our local economy was being boosted and that local farmers were being able to supply what they need. So that's also kind of in conjunction with each other. So through these programs, not only are you ensuring that a healthy and nutritious snack or meal is being served to your students in your after-school program, but you're also helping the local economy as well, because there are provisions that help encourage you to purchase locally. So with that being said, there are two different programs that you can participate in with the after-school programs. You have the after-school snack, or you have the at-risk after-school meals or supper. Sometimes that has a negative connotation with the families that you're serving or the communities that you're serving. So we like to call it super snack instead of just calling it a snack. So your after school snack is only 2 components that you have to serve or offer to the students. So essentially like a carton of milk and some crackers, like goldfish crackers would be acceptable. Fruit and a cheese stick, go forth. Does that make sense for your snack? So it's only 2 options that you have to offer to them. You can offer more and kids can take more, but you're only getting reimbursement amounts for serving 2 components. On here, it has actually the reimbursement rates for you. So if you notice on the snack, at most you're only going to get 94 cents for reimbursement per student. But if you look at that lunch and supper, which is your at-risk after school meals, or your super snack as I like to call it, the reimbursement looks a lot prettier, right? Yes, $3 is prettier than 94 cents, right? Yeah, everyone shake their heads yes. That's a lot more money. What that entails is that you're serving a meal to the students, and it doesn't mean that you are having to wait until 6 o'clock at night to serve it. You can serve it right after school or right when your program starts. And it doesn't need to be anything complex. When we think of a meal, most often everyone are like, oh, I have to do all of this cooking and preparation for these kids, especially if I have, 300 plus attending my program, right? It seems really intensive. It can be something as simple as a sun butter and jelly sandwich. I try not to say peanut butter because there's so many peanut allergies. But like a sun butter and jelly sandwich, carrots, an apple, and a carton of milk. Something simple. Or a ham and cheese sandwich. It doesn't need to be anything extravagant with your meals. If you are a school district, please contact your food service director. They already have things in place and they've already been approved to operate our programs. So it's that much more seamless if you're working with that food service director to be able to provide those meals. They already have staff. We have statistics and proof to show them that it all evens out. That funding isn't just for the food that you purchase for those meals or snacks. It can also go towards labor cost. So if you need to hire someone to prep those meals, that reimbursement funds can pay for that labor and those benefits, okay? So it's not exclusive to only purchasing those food products. Also the supplies that go along with servicing those meals, that's what reimbursement can cover under our requirements. Okay, so I highly encourage you to look into it. If your school is 50% free and reduced or higher, that means all you have to do is a quick tally sheet of students that come through, take their snack. The paperwork is a lot more simple because you'll just claim all at that same free reimbursement rate. If your site is under 50%, then you will have to do an eligibility. So you claim according to the eligibility that has been determined through the National School Lunch Program. Or if you are a center, such as a community center, you'll work under our CACFP team or Child and Adult Care Food Program Center, and you'll work with kind of that side of it. Yes, Courtney.
We're doing that right now.
Right.
I'm trying to transition all my schools over into that, which is harder than I thought it would be, but it'll be awesome when it's done. But from what I understood, though, I couldn't have the schools that were under 50% free and reduced in the meal program.
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that. So
Yes.
under 50%, yes, snack, keep going like before.
Yes.
Over 50% or over can be a part of the meal program. Okay, just wanted to make sure I understood that because I wasn't planning on those other schools.
Yeah.
And then, Trent, check your phone because I'm going to email you in a second.
I just emailed you. So.
Oh, you already did? Okay. So then,
like funding, what? Right?
Well, he already knew I was going to do it, but I forgot to tell him he needed to come on Tuesday to our meeting about it. So, and then my last thought was, with how you said you could cover some funding for it, do we have to show you that, or you know what I mean, or you just send us the reimbursement to our district like we've been doing, but we don't have to turn in any additional time card or anything showing during that time? We don't have to do that, right?
No.
Okay.
Correct.
Just the production of showing them taking the snack and what they took and how many and all that. Okay.
Correct. So clarification. So the after school snack, you can participate no matter what your free and reduced percentage is. The at-risk meals, you have to be 50% or higher. There are a couple of ways that you can qualify by that. If you are an actual school, it needs to be that school data. If you are a community center, we can look into either census data that would provide that information or surrounding schools. So if you're in the border of a school and that's 50% free or reduced, that's how you would qualify. We have all the tools in our office. We are more than happy to work with you on that. I mentioned a restructure in our office. It's because we're expanding. We actually just hired 7 new individuals to expand our office so that we can be more accessible to you all throughout the state of Utah, so that we can help. With that being said, it is a federal program. So you are subject to, we call them administrative reviews. What that means is just compliance monitoring. There's a schedule involved in our office. So with the schools side of things, it's a 5-year cycle. So once every 5 years. It doesn't mean like every 5 years you're going to get it. It could be like you get once in the review cycle, and then as soon as the new review cycle starts, you can start in the first year. So with that being said, you are subject to all of your documents being reviewed, and we'll come on site and we'll monitor that. It sounds intensive and scary. It's not. I promise you. Just make sure you maintain all your documentation. So with that, if you are charging labor and you're using your reimbursement for that labor, you're just going to want documentation to show how that's being done for time and effort. Does that make sense? You don't have to submit it to us every claim cycle. You just make sure that you maintain that. Okay. All right, if you are a school district and you are struggling with your food service director wanting to help you with this, they do have a lot on their plates. There's a lot more to the National School Lunch Program and Breakfast Program than people realize. And they have a lot on their plates, and we understand that. There are other agencies that are available and wanting and willing to help you. For instance, the Utah Food Bank. You can become a site underneath the Utah Food Bank, and they have what they call thaw and serve meals. So what they do essentially is they drop off boxed meals for you that are shelf stable. You get them about a week at a time, and then you just serve them to students. So if you're doing at-risk meals, that's an option for you to go. If you're having struggles with a food service director wanting to help you with this program. Yes?
The food bank actually does hot meals as well, and we've had a really good experience with them, so I would recommend them as well. Wants to go that route, and they take care of all the paperwork and reimbursement, so you don't have to.
Yeah, it's pretty great. It's pretty slick. So, if you have any other questions, please contact us. Again, you'll have Amanda Nils' contact information, so you can contact her. You can use this main line and catch any of us. We all have the information and know where to go with that. If you have more specific detailed questions, please see us after this meeting. We're again on the second floor of this building, so you can come in. Please excuse the mess of our cubicles, but we are more than happy to help. Okay, any other questions before I leave you?
You will get a lot of questions later.
I'm okay with that. That's perfect. If you're not on our programs yet, I want you on our programs. So please contact us. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Yeah, see you later.
So getting back to things, and for those of you who don't have packets, we're getting you packets right now, so everyone will have a packet in just a few moments. Just as a reminder, with this grant, there's three main focus areas. So of course, providing the academic enrichment that is specific to the core academic subjects like reading, mathematics, providing those additional services that complement and support the school day. So aligning with the school day is very, very important. And then we have family engagement. So providing those educational opportunities for families. So not just engaging them with family nights, which I think family nights can be really positive, but connecting with your local district to their adult education services. You could align, maybe do a family night together. So remember, there's other options besides like a family showcase. Come see this. There's other options. So really try to understand what your parents and families need. We'll talk about some other family engagement resources towards the end of the presentation, but just keep these focus areas in mind as you're developing and implementing programming, because that's really what this grant program is about. So all of you in your packet, you have your state indicators and performance measures. It's a document that looks like this. I know some of you don't have your package yet, but these are what we all need to be working towards. We have to do a statewide comprehensive evaluation. So that means the state office will lead that evaluation to see if we're meeting these indicators and performance measures. We are rethinking how we're going to approach that. We had a focus group back, I think, when we had the Bidders Conference in April. We had a little focus group to talk about this, but we're retooling things a bit. So I'll probably seek your feedback, but this is what the comprehensive evaluation is going to be designed under, and it's meant to complement what you're doing for your periodic program evaluation. But these are our state goals and indicators that we need to keep in mind. Again, just like those focus areas I discussed, the state goals and performance indicators are what you need to develop and implement your programming around. So keep these in mind. You should have, whoever for your organization wrote the grant probably looked at these. If you haven't shared them with your staff, please share them with your staff so they know about it. Maybe they don't know the whole history and all of the specifics that fall under these, but they do need to know that that's what we're working for as a state. We want better outcomes for students and families, and this is how we're going to do it through these performance indicators. So I will be following up on the statewide comprehensive evaluation, and we'll talk more about the specifics of that. Now it's everyone's favorite part, the fiscal information. So the Utah grant system. So if you're not familiar with this, all of you who applied for the grants, you did that in the Utah grant system. That's the system we use for application. That's a system we use for reimbursements. This is a reimbursement-based grant. And eventually, that's a system we'll be using for monitoring, for risk assessment. That side of it is still being developed. In your packet, you have some information about Utah grants. So how to request reimbursement, how to do budget revisions. We are in fiscal year 20, so it's school year 2019-2020, but as a state, we're in fiscal year 20, so that runs July 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2020. So we always go on the second part of it. So you'll see pretty soon in the Utah grant system that we're uploading your awards for that. So you'll go in, you've already done your budget, but you'll put in your budget information again for that, for those of you who applied this year for new funding. Those of you who are in years 2 through 5 of your grant cycle, we call that continuation. So then you'll go in and enter your budget. You'll also do your continuation application. Now this is only for grantees who are in years 2 through 5. If you applied and got new funding, we call you new 21st century. So you've already done your application, you've already have your project plan. So you're new in the system. So that is coming soon.
Camille? So for example, for us, we got the funding this spring. We're not able to use all our money. So will we be able to carry over some of the last?
Yes, and we'll talk about carryover funding in just a bit. I know those of you who received awards for 2018, 2019, it was an incredibly late grant cycle. So we will talk about carryover funding, and that will be available. So on our Utah State Board of Education website, we have a whole Utah grant section. And they have all sorts of different resources. If you're not sure how to add a user, you need to locate award information, and I'll send everyone this link because there's multiple steps to get to this link. But all of the instructions are always on this page, and they keep this updated very regularly. Any questions about Utah grants? Okay, so this is for, oh, sorry, Margaret, yes?
Continuation applications in your emails several weeks ago, you stated the PDF file, 26-page PDF file is one of the attachments, and there would be other attachments that be required.
You need to upload that PDF for the continuation application. So grants in years 2 through 5, you need to upload that to the Utah grant system when you're doing your budget.
There are other uploads that you want?
No, just that continuation application PDF.
So it's not in here yet?
No, the budget is not in Utah grants yet. We are working on that, and so we might have to extend the due date, but I will keep you updated.
So there'll be no other attachments then?
Just the PDF continuation application.
Okay, thank you.
If we need to do a revision to the budget, is that just the new budget we put in, or do we need to do the budget that was planned for and then do a revision on top
So
of
if
that?
you have carryover funding for 2019, so last fiscal year, you can do a revision on that. And then whatever you want your new budget to be, that's what you would enter, and you could write in the budget narrative details. These are some changes from the original proposal. So anyone who has fiscal year 2018 funding, so that wouldn't be anyone who have received the grant this year or last year, maybe your organization did, but if you have any of these, these are the codes we use. So 18 state activities, that was the mini grant. 18 supplemental, so if you receive supplemental grant funds, or 18 ASFT, that stands for after school flow through. So if you have any of these in the Utah grant system, that money is going to expire September 30th of this year. So we're almost done with August, so very, very soon this money is going to expire. Please spend your money, because if you don't spend your money, this money goes back to our federal partners, and we encourage you, if you're like, I just can't, or you don't think you can, call us, let us know. We can try to brainstorm. Tammy and Sandy are great, so that it's spent appropriately. So as a state, we're not sending money back to our federal partners. So if you have any of those codes, please, please, please look at them now. Margaret?
Will you have mini grants this year for unused?
Potentially. Potentially. We're looking at our budget right now, so. Any?
So, going back to year 2 to 5, the continuation, we're not able to enter yet in Utah grants?
Not yet.
Okay, and you'll let us know?
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely. Okay, so just some reimbursement information, and then we'll go have Sandy and Tammy talk about time and effort. So we do recommend you reimburse quarterly. If you need to do a monthly, that's even better. But it makes us really, really nervous when we haven't seen any reimbursements come through and it's May, June. It just makes us really nervous. this. And I know things happen, it might be out of your control, but I included in your packet this table. So this table has information about the reimbursement schedule. So we pay reimbursement grants once a month. So that's why we have these deadlines. It's not just you submit your reimbursement and then we immediately issue a payment. It's we pay once a month. So these are deadlines. The deadline for you, it says LEA, but that includes community-based organization. When you need to work with your fiscal team, whether you're a school district or a community-based organization, in order to get it in by the due date, so then you can be paid that month. So this is the updated for this fiscal year. So look this over, maybe schedule a meeting with your fiscal staff, whoever you work with at your school district or your community-based organization, so you can get a plan set for this year that maybe you're moving towards a quarterly or even better, a monthly reimbursement schedule. So that's what this is. These are the deadlines that we need to receive everything. So full approval in Utah grants, because Utah grants isn't just one person approving. As many of you know, there's the creator, and then they send it to the internal approver. The internal approver reviews, then they send it to us, and so sometimes it goes to Sandy, sometimes it goes to Tammy, then it goes to me, and then it goes to 2 more people in financial operations. So it's a whole process, but to get it in this due date, your internal approver needs to have submitted it to USDE. So keep this in mind as you're planning your year with spending your funding and looking at your budget. With each reimbursement, we do need a general ledger and time and effort documentation. And depending on how regular you've been with your reimbursement schedule, we might request a sample of receipts. So we take that on more of a case-by-case basis. If your organization hasn't been submitting a lot of reimbursements, we might request all of the receipts with that, or a sampled receipt. So Tammy and Sandy will work with your fiscal staff to get those receipts and that information. Or if we see something on the general ledger, we might ask for more documentation. And then any budget change, you do a budget revision in Utah grants, and you'll need to provide information in Utah grants about why you're changing the budget.
How late can we go with budget changes?
You can make budget changes at any time, but if you're making a lot of budget changes repeatedly, I might, give you a call and say, how are things going? So Sandy or Tammy, do you want to come and talk about time and effort and using the electronic system? If you're a community-based organization, what does that mean? Share your wisdom and knowledge with us. I don't know if you need the clicker.
I don't know. Have you got stuff up?
No.
No. Okay. A couple of things that you ought to know, and just adding on to what Camille has told you. If you get your reimbursement request in by the 25th of the month before you want the reimbursement, that gives us enough time to look at it. If we have questions, we can get back to you, you can get back to us, and we can get that process done before the final date that it has to go in. So if you get it in by the 25th of the month previous, then you're almost guaranteed to get your money at the end, because any questions then, we have enough time to ask, get information, all of that kind of stuff. If you wait to the very last minute, if we have questions, we may not have time, because from the time that the last day for you, we only have 4 days to get those through. And so we may not have time to get back to you with information, therefore your reimbursement will be delayed another month. So the sooner you can get it in to us, the better. Don't wait till the last minute. And the other thing is on it, if we see something that looks odd, one thing that we'll ask Camille was, is this something that was in their grant application? So if you have something specific you want to do, make sure it's in your application or in your information. And if it's not in there, but you still want to do it, let Camille know ahead of time before you do it to make sure that it's an approvable activity. If you're taking the kids to Lagoon, we're not going to approve that. If you're getting
jump things for your kids to play on. We're not going to approve that. So if you have any questions, make sure that you call and get them approved before it happens. Otherwise, you may be scrambling to figure out how you're going to pay for it. So be aware of that. All right, time effort is a mandatory document for anybody receiving title money, federal money of any kind, whether it's IDA, whether it's Title I, Title II. Time and effort is mandatory. So there are 3 types, and I think we gave you copies of the 3 different ones. Oh, you have pulled them up? Okay, the first one is if your people are getting paid from more than one source. So let's say that they're getting general ed money and after-school money, or they're getting Title I money because the school is allowing Title I money to help fund the after-school program, which is an allowable expense. But if they're getting paid from 2 different grants, then those people have to do a time and effort document monthly. And it has to list what programs they're getting paid from, either what percentage of their time is spent there or what part of their time is spent there. And it has to be shown on your time and effort. So time and effort must include the name of the school, the name of the person, what their title is, and what the approval date is. So let's say that you want to go from August 20th to September 20th. That's 1 month. It can include more than 1 pay period, but it needs to be at least a month's time. All right, so then you show all of their time and effort that was spent during that 1 month period. It needs to be signed and dated by the employee, signed and dated by their supervisor. Not the secretary in the office, must be their supervisor, okay? So you can put in the day if you like and how many hours they spent on that day and list across the top what kind of payment they're getting. There's a wide variety of ways to show time and effort. If you're working with a Title I school, then they should already have a time and effort format or form that you can use. You can use the same one, it's fine. It's approvable. Now, the signatures have to be after the fact. So if your end date for this period of time is August 1st, you can't have it signed on July 5th. Because any time then from July 5th to August 4 is not refundable. Okay, so be aware of that. It must be signed either the last day of the form or after, but it cannot be signed before. So let's say that school ends on, I don't know, May 20th, okay? But your month goes till June 1st. You can't have them sign it on May 20th. It has to be June 1st. Either that or you change your form to the last day that you're going to work. Okay? It can be less than a month. It just can't be more than a month. Okay? Questions? All right, that's form number 1. Yes?
The grant reimbursement schedule for March, there's a typo. Could you give us the correct date that's due?
I have no idea what's on that form.
Here you go. Oh, yeah, it says 31/2020. I can talk to the team and have them adjust that. Thank you, Margaret.
Should it be 10 then?
I think it's 310. I think that
Not
slash is,
31.
yeah.
Not 3-1.
No, 310, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Question?
You said multiple grants. If they're both 21st century grants, do you still need
But
to
it's
have
still different
2 different
grants.
grants?
Because it's not this, you're not paying them from the same code. Yeah, that becomes then a problem. All right. Now, the other part that you can do with people that are working under multiple programs is that if they have a fixed schedule, So that means they do the same thing every time they come to work every week. Okay? Or for a week's time, the next week they do the same thing on each of those days at the same time. If that's true, then you can fill out this form, but for 6 months. Okay? You can do it for 6 months maximum. You can do it less than that, so if their schedule changes. But you must attach their schedule. Okay? Whatever schedule that you have for them for that time period must be attached for whatever length of time you decide to limit that. So let's say that the school you're working with is on quarters. Then maybe their schedule is the same for every quarter. So you would have to do their time and effort every time their work schedule changes or what they're doing in that time period. So what happens then is that if Camille comes out to monitor, she should be able to look at that time and effort document schedule and find the person at a certain place during that time period. Okay? So just kind of be aware of that separate option. Now the third one is for those people that work 100% under one grant application. So if you have 3 grants, but you have one person that only works for this grant or only works for this one, then again, that's a 6-month form. You can change it. It can be less than 6 months, however you need to work that. But it shows on there that they are spending 100% of their time and effort on approved Title IV, whatever your grant application is, work. Okay? And again, they all include the name of the school, the name of the person, their job title, and the certification dates. And again, they have to be signed after the fact, both the employee and the supervisor. Now, there are a lot of schools or a lot of programs that use an electronic system. Okay? If your school or your program is using an electronic system, let us see it to make sure that it fits everything that we need. Okay? And if it does, then that's perfectly acceptable. Okay, question?
For example, what you just said, so if we just print off the labor reports, the historic labor reports from the system, then that can be the documentation.
It can be, but send us a copy ahead of time, just so we make sure that it has all the information we need.
Okay, and then second question, the templates that Camille is bringing up, these are just ideas for, or
They're
these
just
are templates
ideas.
she wants to use?
No, these are just options.
These are just options for you to do.
These
Now,
are much better than the first one.
oh, well, this one, the 100%ers is actually nicer because you can use one page for everybody that's 100%. You know, but they have to sign and date it. You sign and date it at the bottom, one page. Again, remember, after the fact signatures. Okay, other questions? Feel free to contact us anytime if you have any questions. If you have a form you want to use, you know, that's great. If you want to use one of these, that's okay too. Okay? But make sure that when you put in those dates, it includes month, day, year, beginning and ending. Okay? Any other questions? Okay, you got it. Thank you.
10-minute break, so if everyone can be back by 11:26, which has changed. So we'll take a 10-minute break. There's restrooms outside.
Yes, I do.
Like right outside the building. So good. There's Robert Frost. I know. How are you? When I was in college, we did an entire semester in speech class. over and I saw these woods. Red. That was what I
I did.
Hello. How are you? Tuesday morning. He was like, can we stop by sometime this week? And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Dance guys will do like next week in the morning and like a specific day. What time? Like your station
I tried to schedule a phone call with her, and I gave her like some time ranges, and I was like, yeah, I'm pretty available all Monday. She was like, great, I'll call you Monday, and I was like, is there a specific time that I can plan on? And she was like, oh, I'll just give you a call on Monday. Your window's huge. I was like, it's not. And then I couldn't answer when she called. She called me out. I don't know. She's like, is this any time? And I was like, I'm not working. Like, I don't have a lot. So I rescheduled her.
Oh, I should go.
I guess right now it works. Is this time for me? She's just sitting in her office doing absolutely nothing. And waiting for my phone call from 9 to 5 all day. Waiting for my phone call and I can already be tired. So it's like
that eventually.
There's been no remember your papers are going to be I have a signed picture. You'll have old album that you'll have a 5 or 19. So that'll be March. And then you'll have another one from July. That makes sense. That's still spending that carryover spend. Yeah. But once you get that submitted, then we kind of go. Okay.
Are they doing the ribbon cutting?
Order t-shirts. I want to talk to the coordinators on Thanksgiving. Yeah, I mean, city or then like Utah, that we could like light up. This year is the 20th anniversary of our town. So they're trying to go old like this weekend and just trying to get the old
Spring event, you said it's around 2 days.
I was thinking that we should do like a prom night, and that's what I'm going to propose to all the that we do in their community centers. Audit Central Park and use like the space.
Abigail? Yeah, she's great.
Have a big band. It's kind of like the police fair. Spend less money on lights on. Make it payslip. The tech center is like already paid for, so we save money that way. And that's like an big
How many times did you guys do
We're gonna get started legislators to all the different events and do like a budget before. Great.
Someone earlier mentioned carryover. So typically, you can carry over less than 25%. You just need to know, and you'll do this in the Utah grant system, or you'll submit a plan to me, but we need to know why you're carrying over under 25%. We encourage you to spend all of your money within that school year. But we know last school year, so anyone who received a new award for 2018-2019, the grant competition and the review and everything was very, very late. So we anticipate you're gonna have more than 25% carryover. So you can submit the request. But typically, so you can submit that for this school year and you'll still be in in alignment with this policy.
So that needs to be spent this next year.
Yes. We don't let you.
We don't get to carry over all 5
No. 27 months is the period of availability for each year. So for 18-19, you had 27 months. So from June 1st, 2018, that's 27 months. But again, if you want to carry over 25% or more every 3 years, once every 3 years, that's a policy. But for those of you who are awarded in 2018, 2019, we'll take that on a case-by-case basis, and it wouldn't necessarily count towards that once every 3 years because it wasn't a typical grant cycle. So we will take that into consideration. Now that's only for new grant awards. So anyone who received a new 21st Century grant in 2018, 2019.
Okay, what about the case that we did a rewrite and we were kind of in a similar boat?
Last year, did you?
Yeah, so we rewrote for it, but because we got the money so late, we didn't
Yes,
spend it all.
that would be
So
a
the
case
same
where you could,
exception.
yes.
Okay, perfect.
There will be, because we recognize you might need to carry over another time within that period of, once every 3 years, we allow it, but last year was significantly delayed, and we recognize that, and we don't want you to come, for those of you who had new grants in 2018, 2019, to lose that money, or feel like you're spending it just on a lot of candy. Is that gonna help the, we want you to be intentional with your spending plan and your carryover. So yes, Sandy?
One of the things that you have to be aware of, if you're not, is that the reason that we are in Utah grants is so the legislature can look at what's coming in and what's being spent. Now, you have to remember that in order to get this grant to even come to the state when they allow it, it has to be signed by the governor. If the governor doesn't sign the grant application that we send in, then we don't get the money. And if they're looking at this and saying, you guys aren't spending this money, you don't need it. So spend your money. Get it in, get it reimbursed. Don't try to carry over money forever. It's going to come back and kick you in the butt. Sorry to be frank, but it will. And, just be careful. Get the money spent, get it reimbursed in a timely manner.
So if you do have carryover, I'll be contacting you. We'll work out the plan, what you'll submit, we'll do all of that together. So if you do have carryover, I'll be contacting you.
No, September.
So everyone's favorite other part is allowable and unallowable expenses. As we've been going through a lot of documentation this past school year, we found a lot of things that we wanted to bring to your attention that are not the best use of these funds, but these are allowable expenses. So of course, staff. We know the large majority of your grants will cover staff expenses. Supplies, materials, equipment, professional development and training, field trips are allowable, but there needs to be a direct link to education, your program goals and outcomes. As Sandy said, Lagoon is not allowable, but if you want to take them to the Natural History Museum and you have a good lesson plan for how that's going to teach them about, dinosaurs or the water cycle or whatever it is, there needs to be that link, or it will be considered entertainment, and we cannot use these funds for entertainment. But with pre-approval and a connection to an academic component, he's going on a field trip to the Natural History Museum would be allowable. Some food costs. So for healthy snacks and dinner, I encourage that. For parent engagement nights, where the parents are taking something home, they're learning about how they can support their child's academic and social emotional learning, those would be allowable. But I highly, highly recommend you contact Child Nutrition and get on the reimbursement program, because food can eat through your budget very quickly. As Kathleen mentioned, if you're a school and you're not able to connect with your food services director, contact them and they can help you be that bridge to connecting with your food services director. Or if you're a community-based organization and you're like, I just don't know what to do, contact them. They can get you a sponsor. And if you don't like your current sponsor, or just not the right match, let them know and they can help you with that as well. Bert?
I'm just confused about food costs and professional development. We did a professional development for our staff, and we had a lunch catered for them, and our university kicked that back and said that was not allowable expense. But then when we go to a conference, the lunch is provided, that's allowable. It just seemed weird to us.
Do you want to take that, Sandy?
Part of what that is, if you're going to a conference, you are paying a registration fee. They're assuming that part of that registration fee is for food. So if you did a professional development and you charged an administration fee that would cover food, you could do that.
So if we build ourselves a registration fee.
I'll bill you, you bill me. How about that?
That would just take a lot of effort, but
It's just the idea that both state and federal are saying we're spending way too much money on food for staff.
But when you have them in a place for a whole day and you're doing a staff development, it seems reasonable.
Then you send them out for lunch. I mean, even we are having to do that for our meetings here.
Another food clarification question. You said parent engagement, so does that mean like in the past we've done like dinner for like lights on events for families? Yes. Or cookies?
As
so
long
those
as
are
the
okay.
families are taking something home about how they can support their child in an academic way, social, emotional, that it's a quality parent engagement activity. And I know food gets people to places. I get that. Mm-hmm. Staff training, that's slightly different, but with parent engagement, as long as they're getting something, they can some resources, something. It's intentionally planned.
Perfect. Thank you.
I know in the past, Camille, I've even asked for my one I just had, that it was approved as long as it was a certain amount of hours, and there was an agenda that was attached to the receipt showing that it was completely professional based on speakers coming in and lessons learned and messages, like that type of thing, instead of just a staff meeting, that it was approved as long as there was an agenda with a certain amount of hours attached to it. So that's what I've always done. I mean, we only have that once a year, you know.
And we've had a change based on discussions with leadership. They have requested that we no longer go down that path. And Sandy, do you want to provide background? We have allowed it in the past, but moving forward it will no longer be allowed.
If you had allowed it before and I did it, then
yes,
I'm good.
But moving forward,
is
it's no longer acceptable.
Okay, just wanted to. Okay, that's.
Thanks. Sorry, I made you stand up.
That's all right. I'm short.
Pre-approval is required for t-shirts. If they're specifically for student safety, we can't buy staff shirts, but we can buy t-shirts for if you're going on a big field trip and it makes sense to have the kids wear neon orange shirts. Out-of-state travel requires pre-approval.
Get them pre-approved, however.
And any overnight travel.
But Camille, all those things you call allowable. If I didn't put them in my proposal, then how do I justify it?
I think that's something you need to, you're doing your continuation applications now. Some of you who received new funding, you're doing that. So consider that as you're going through your continuation application budget. If you need to make revisions, if you got new funding for the 2019-2020 school year, consider that as well now. And as Sandy said, we do monitor based on your proposal, based on your budget narrative. We get things changed. That's why we have a process for budget revisions.
When you're asking for pre-approvals, that's done through the budget change request, or is it through an email?
Through an email. If you're like, we're going to go on a big field trip and, we want, maybe you want t-shirts, then yes.
Did that go to you or to
me? Yeah. There's some allowable expenses, anything that would be considered entertainment. We've been using Lagoon as an example, so something that Nickelcade would be entertainment. As we mentioned, from this point on, you can no longer have food for meetings and or trainings. candy and soda, incentives. If you wanted to incentivize students, you could use educational incentives, books, pencils, colored pencils. You could maybe get something donated from the community, but you can't specifically use incentives with these funds. Any toys, plastic things, gift cards, gaming system, t-shirts, unless pre-approved and connected to safety of students, and any taxes on purchases.
Mentioned Lagoon. Actually, every year there is physics at Lagoon that is organized. That will not be.
No, I think Sandy has talked to different organizations about that specific.
Okay.
And staff shirts are not considered a safety issue. I mean, I think one of the guidelines is that your staff is easily recognizable to the children and to people, you know what I mean? So having, especially on field trips or even in your facility, especially if you're in a school after school, having, that's not safety.
Tammy, do you want to take that one?
I would say where you're in your environment, that's not a safety issue or it's when you go out.
Right.
That it's more applicable to where you're going or what's happening.
Right, but that's because it said that the students, you could have it, but not for the staff. And
That's why we asked to have them pre-approved, so that we can look at that particular outing and just see what needs to be done.
We'll discuss the staff t-shirts for if you're going on a field trip. We'll have an internal discussion about that and follow up with everyone about that. Any questions as you let this marinate about allowable and unallowable costs? I just want to say these are federal dollars. And as you know, the 21st century, right now, the grant program is threatened to be eliminated. We had a huge reduction in our overall funds. We have very limited funds. All of the amount of money we get each year is based on census data. So we have funding for now. As I said, Congress has always supported this grant program, but we don't know. But we need to be good stewards of federal funding, of state funding. So if we're ever audited and they pick some Birch Creek Elementary and our federal partners come and visit, I want to make sure there's no issues, especially on the federal side with this entertainment piece. That has become a big topic that our federal partners have gone over with us again and again, as well as the food at trainings on a state level. So we don't do these things because we want to make your life harder, or we don't want kids to have fun, because after school programs should be fun, absolutely. But we have to work within certain guidelines so we can continue to get this funding. So just keep that in mind. And it never hurts. Just shoot us an email if it's kind of a different expense. We can talk amongst ourselves and then talk with you and go through that process. So please reach out to us if you were like, it's on the line of what would be allowable, can we do it? So reach out to us. So in your packet, you have this document. So it's this big, kind of different font. So this is our board rule. So we have a board rule for out of school time standard. And it aligns with our technical assistance model, our partnership with the Department of Workforce Services Office of Child Care, and Utah After School Network about quality programming. So anytime there's a law or code, our office has a board rule. So I just wanted to bring it to your attention. It talks about what are the pieces of quality, all of that information, and it's important because this is what we should all be working towards. We all have different programs, whether we're a community-based, a school district, or rural, or urban, whatever it is. We're all different programs, but we all should be working towards quality programs. And not only do we have a code around quality out-of-school time programs, but we have a board rule. So recognizing the importance of these programs and how they can support students and families outside of the regular school day by supporting and aligning with the regular school day. So I just wanted to bring it to your attention that we do have this, and this is how we shape all of our technical assistance around quality around this. We need to have quality programs because that's how we're going to get better outcomes. That's how we're going to keep these programs funded, is showing that not only the programs are quality, but we're having good student and family outcomes. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. and move into monitoring and evaluation. So many federal, state grants are moving towards risk-based monitoring. You have in your packet what the risk-based monitoring pre-assessment tool looks like that I go through. It just asks questions about, have you ever received this federal award in the past? Is this your first time? Has there been any changes in leadership? So I go through this and assign a score, and that's related to a risk level, and that's how I'll measure. So it's based on this. So I'm not going out and seeing, City of South 5 times this year. It's based on something. So I wanted everyone to have a copy of this risk assessment tool. My goal is to see all of the organizations this year, though. So this is how your risk will be determined. So we talked a lot about the continuation application. That's for grantees who are in years 2 through 5. You'll do that. You have the PDF form fill. Once your budget is in Utah Grants, that's when you'll submit that. So we have your budget and your application all together in one place. So it's not just in files on our system, but it's actually in the Utah Grants system. So if you have any application changes, because we know that programs don't just stay the same. It's not just exactly what you write in your proposal. There is a program site change form that just lists, this is the change we're making. If you're making any substantial changes, and this happens after you've submitted your continuation application, maybe you have to move the location of your program site because they're knocking down the school you used to be in for whatever reason. These things happen. We understand that. We just want to document it. So I will share with everyone that link that you can submit, and these are after you submit your continuation application. So if they decide to knock down the school for whatever reason, or it crumbles, or you have to be relocated due to a flood, then you'll fill out this form. So we have that documented. You also have a due date form in your packet that goes through the year. It starts off with your carryover request, so we'll be doing that now and contacting people to discuss your plan. Monitoring is based on your risk assessment. We use the same monitoring form, and you can find that on the website. We have a specific website for 21st Century on our State Board of Education website. So you can find the monitoring tool there, and I'll add the risk-based monitoring pre-assessment. But many of you have seen this tool. That's the monitoring tool. That's in addition to the pre-assessment I do with the risk-based monitoring. New this year, we'll have a mid-year and an annual report, and so it will likely be on those things that you reported in your grant application to see how you're doing. There might be some output data needed, but I will get you the questions very soon so you have that. But I have been asked several times to pull numbers for this grant program, and I usually have to go either a year back or 2 years back because I don't have them. It's helpful to have them for whatever, if someone comes, federal or state, they need these numbers, then we would have those. So I'll get you the details about that, and it would be one mid-year and one annual for each program site or center that's funded with the grant. So with the statewide comprehensive evaluation that we will be undergoing, it's likely that I'll need you to collect your participation data in a certain format. If you participated in the intergenerational poverty grant or program quality enhancement grant, there's been a certain template you've used. It's likely that is the same template we'll be using, and I'm going to try to align with what you already have to report for 21 APR. So that this participation template for the statewide comprehensive evaluation and what you have to report for 21 APR, which is the federal reporting system for 21st Century, is one and the same. So that information will be forthcoming about exactly what that looks like. But my goal is, so 21 APR, everyone hopefully entered who received a grant last year, entered for fall 2018. The due date was yesterday. But it's fall 2018, and it's August 28th in 2019, and you're just reporting for that. what we need to do is I need to find a way to check in to see how you're doing with collecting that required 21 APR data. That is a federal requirement. That's something on a monitoring level that when we get monitored by our federal partners that they're going to be looking at. So I want to develop some tools for that also align with the comprehensive statewide evaluation that we have to do. So going back to the state goals and indicators. So I'm hoping that it wouldn't be too much. Some of you might not have as many resources. You're new to the program, understanding that, getting your systems down. Other of you have been doing it for many years, so I might lean on you to share some of your templates you have. But there will be some kind of participation data check-in that hopefully ties both the statewide comprehensive evaluation and the 21 APR data collection together. So you're not doing like two separate reports, is the goal. So I will send more information about that. 21 APR, again, we're reporting after the fact. The typical period for summer, if you do summer period, is anywhere from March to May of the following year, and then fall is usually June to August, spring, September to December. So again, we're always almost six to 8 months behind with that reporting. So we need to come up with a way so we're tracking that better, and it could also support the statewide comprehensive evaluation. Periodic program evaluation. Everyone should be doing some kind of program evaluation, whether you contract out with a group, whether you have a team internally that's supporting. You need to have some kind of consistent program evaluation going on. So are you hitting your goals and outcomes you mentioned in your proposal? That's very, very important to have. And then Youth After School Network will talk about technical assistance, visits. We talked about the statewide comprehensive evaluation quite a bit. An update is coming. We're reconfiguring in our office about what that will look like, but I'm trying to align with what you already have to do at a federal level. What are those federal requirements for 21 APR with what we do with the statewide, using some of the same data. So same data, but slightly different purposes. So again, please be sure that you have some kind of evaluation happening at your organization level for all of your program sites, that you're using the results. You're talking to families, you're talking to teachers, you're using this evaluation to see, am I meeting my targets? Am I meeting the needs of my families and my students, administration in the building? Are you meeting those, and are you refining those with what your program looks like, what you're trying to implement? And that you're making those available to the public. So this is a federal requirement that each grantee needs to do, a program evaluation. And everyone does this in a different way. That's the great thing with federal grants. They give you general requirements, and then we need to fill in the gaps. So if you need help or support with this, let me know. We can brainstorm together to figure out what's going to make sense for you, because it might not be you're contracting out with a university to pay for a $100,000 impact evaluation. Is that going to make the most sense? No, I don't think anyone has that much money, but what are some other things you can do for program evaluation that fit within your budget and what your goals and outcomes are for the grant? We talked about the 21 APR, that's a federal reporting system. For those new organizations who received the grant for 2019-2020, I'll be meeting with you to get you set up in the system. You have a document. Here it's pink, printed on very nice smooth paper. So this gives you an overview, and essentially the data that's reported in 21 APR is data that's reported to Congress in terms of deciding whether they continue this funding or whatever decision they make. So this is data that's reported to Congress. So it's very important that once you're in the 21 APR system, that you're submitting your data on time, that you're showing all the great things you're doing. It's not a perfect system, but it's what we have, and it's how we show Congress that our programs are making a difference. So for Utah, so each state decides which type of data they're going to submit. We do teacher-reported surveys. You have those in your packet. So we use teacher-reported surveys. And we use state assessment data, which would include RISE, and then also we're elementary DIBELS. So just keep that in mind, how important this requirement is. I will be following up with you. I'll be doing check-ins around, do you have a system set up so you can easily collect this data? I don't want it to be hard for you. So if you need support around this, we can help. I can help, and we can work on this together because it needs to be submitted. And there's very specific deadlines. And once a system closes, it closes. We will report on activities, staffing, participation, and outcomes. So that's our federal reporting system. In your packet, you have a green and white document. And now it's searching for it. Oh. So talking about evidence-based practices. So under the Every Student Succeeds Act, which is the mandate for our federal funding, this is federal funding, it's very important that you're using evidence-based practices, resources, curriculum in your program. So we don't, some other title programs, some other federal programs have a very high level of evidence. They have to maybe use curriculum or resources that that come from correlational research. For this program, which is Title 4B, 21st Century, that's our title number, we have to use the fourth tier, which is, the practices, the curriculum, the resources you're using demonstrate a rationale. So this just takes you through what that means. But my point of all this is you need to be using quality evidence-based practices and resources. You can't just use something because it's cool or it's flashy. But what are you using your curriculum that has actually been used with the population of students you're hoping to serve? Is it focusing on math and reading if that is one of your goals and outcomes to support that? So really take a look at the different curriculum, resources, practices that you're implementing. Are they evidence-based? I'm not saying you have to, have gone through a rigorous peer review process and been published in, the highest tier of developmental psychology journal, but is there some evidence that supports that this is effective for the students that you're serving? So is it intentional, or is it just something that the person before you used because that's what they had? So really dive into those practices, the curriculum, the resources you're using, and making sure they're evidence-based. These are some resources that if you're not sure, you need a curriculum. There's the Education Resources Information Center, Evidence for ESSA, What Works Clearinghouse. So if you wanted maybe a specific reading strategy or a curriculum, you could go to one of these and kind of go through it and say, okay, is this going to meet our target? Is this something we could easily implement? So just being intentional with what you're selecting to build your program and to design your program about that. It's evidence-based. So family engagement. So about 3 weeks ago, we had Dr. Karen Mapp, who's out of Harvard, and she came to a Title I conference, and she presented on quality family engagement. So we all went through this practice of think about some family engagement nights that you've either organized or you've participated in, and think about quality family engagement nights. Did they have a connection to learning? Were they asset-based? Were they interactive? And a lot of the ones that I was thinking of that I organized when I was working in programs were none of these things. So I think family engagement is tricky. It's hard because we want to engage families, but also with after-school programs, they are supporting working families or families who might not be able to come and volunteer or might not be able to come to pizza nights or whatever it is. But we need to do a better job of what do families really need and how can I incorporate that into my after-school family engagement nights. What are quick and easy things that you don't require, them to come volunteer in your program or to come at, 4:45 on a Tuesday night in March. So really thinking about these activities, is there a direct tie to academics, to social emotional? Are you providing some resources that the families can take home, some quick and easy things that they could take home and they could start implementing? Because that's what we really want to move towards. So she has a whole system, and she has great resources. So I encourage you to check her out. I'll send you guys the link for this and other information. They have some best practices, how you could implement this easily, but really look at this model, because this is a great framework to approach your family engagement nights. So it's not just pizza night, this random day and there's no connection. You're just doing it because you feel like you need to meet the parents, but what are some other quick things you can do that maybe the parents don't have to come once a year to this? Family engagement can look different in all of these communities, and we need to push for quality family engagement. So please look at this resource. Use it when you're judging your own family engagement nights that you're planning or hoping to plan. And do these fit in? Are parents taking something away? Is there a developmental connection there? Is it collaborative, interactive? So please take this framework and as you're designing family engagement, consider it. So your last page of your packet has the adult education contacts for all of the school districts in the state. One of the focus areas for 21st Century is around adult education. Many of you work very, very closely with your local districts. Maybe you're within a school. Even if you're a community-based center, there's some collaboration that could potentially be had. You could share some resources if you find out when the district is doing family adult learning activities. So like a high school, I can't think of high school diploma class. Maybe you could provide that as a resource to your parents, not you providing the class, but saying, hey, they're sending a flyer home or posting it on your wall, something like this. Making that connection. Maybe you can collaborate on a quality family engagement night that involves your adult education services with your local district. So please check that out depending on what district you're in. And then I wanted to share the promising practices page. So Dr. Christelle Estrada has put this together to highlight some very high quality promising practices that different organizations are utilizing to serve our English learners. So this is a great resource. They have videos that you could watch during a staff meeting, or it could be something you could have your staff, maybe a homework assignment. So check out Utah's promising practices. All right. So that is it for me for now, but I invited Megan Braming from the Department of Workforce Services Office of Child Care just to talk more about our alignment and our connection with this other state.
So I'm not going to take up too much of your time, just a quick brief. One of the things that we are striving towards between USBE and Department of Workforce Services is to work smarter, not harder. And the goal really with that is whenever you have multiple grants, you're used to seeing multiple people coming out and actually visit your sites throughout the entirety of the year. Our goal that we're working towards is to actually come together, to come out and make sure that the time that we're utilizing and the time that we're utilizing of yours is beneficial to all, so that we're always working towards that same progress. Along those lines, we're also trying to align some of our focuses. That way we can make sure that we're not asking you to, I would say, contradict one grant requirement out of one department versus a grant requirement out of another department. So those are the ways that we're going to be kind of moving forward. It will be a slow process just because we have two different state agencies that have to work together, but along with the Utah After School Network, we're going to get this moving, and we're hoping that we'll be able to see some progress over the next year and be able to really help you guys establish more resources and find that they're just like you're creating your communities of collaboration, we're creating ours, and we're trying to make sure that we can give you that wraparound service as well.
All right, my turn. Hello, everybody. I would like to say I'll be quick, but I'll say I'll be efficient so you can all get to lunch.
We still have 28 minutes.
Still have 28 minutes. Let's shoot for 26. All right, hello everybody. I'm Ben Trentleman. I'm the Director of Operations with the Utah After School Network. We provide you with resources and support as a part of your receiving the 21st Century funding. We basically get to come into your programs and help you to set goals and to move forward on different initiatives and things along those lines. That works for goals you're working on for your grant specifically, but also your program in general. Basically, UAN, we believe that every child in Utah should have access to a high-quality after-school program. So everything that we do is geared towards that. So this is our team. I like to share our pictures just because we come into your programs, we come into your schools. It's always weird when you have a stranger coming into your space. We're not strangers. Look at our warm and friendly faces. These are the out-of-school time specialists. They're the ones who will actually be coming into your program and doing that work with you. So, as I had said, we support after school by supporting programs, supporting staff, and supporting after school. So I'm going to break down what each of those looks like for you. So in supporting programs, our out-of-school time specialists will come into your programs, will provide you with observations, will provide you with self-assessment resources and tools, and then once we look at where your program is, then we can work with you to provide you with consulting, coaching, presentations, and trainings, along with whatever else you need. We talk about it being technical assistance. We're not all that technically savvy, so that statement can be misleading. So don't ask us to come like hook your printer up to your Wi-Fi or something like that, because we can't do that. We can come and mess around with it. We'll have a good time talking to you while we're messing around with it, but I can't guarantee results in that vein. So how the quality improvement system works is basically we're always looking at research and we're looking at best practices. We're looking at data that we're getting from all of you as well. We look at Utah-specific research and evaluations, and that's what really drives our technical assistance and our professional development. So we take the information that we're learning from you, as well as other resources, and then we take that and we share it with you. So what we hope is we're going to be able to create some staff change in your programs, in how you're training your staff and how you're implementing different best practices and things along those lines. And ultimately, through those staff changes that we're able to create in what we're doing in your programs, you're going to see some positive youth outcomes. Because it's all about the kids. Our technical assistance model, this is what you can expect as we go through the school year with you and the support that we're providing to you. We start the year off by assessing the programs. This is you doing internal assessments through the quality self-assessment tool, which I'll mention in a moment here. We also provide observations through the program quality assessment. This is a nationally used tool that is from the Weichert Center that looks at staff interactions with youth and some facility things as well. And basically we're able to look at all that information, look at your self-assessments, look at your goals that you have for your organizations, look at that external observation we're providing with you, and then create your own technical assistance plan, look at your goals, and talk about what you'd like to do throughout the year. Then we get into our implementation phase that is really November through April, where we're coming into your program and we're supporting you in 90-day improvement cycles. So we go through 2 different 90-day cycles where we're looking at 3 different months where we'll set a goal, we'll check in with you on that specific goal or those specific goals, we'll talk about how you're doing on it, what are additional resources you need, and then we help you to implement those changes in your programs. And that's what's happening all throughout this time. Then we get to the end of the year, we assess things to look at how we did. Did you see the improvements in your program that you wanted to see? Did you achieve the goals that you were hoping to achieve? If yes, fantastic. High fives all around. If no, then we reassess the goals. We talk about what we can do to move forward on that goal in the next year, or what tweaks we can make to make sure that you're moving in the direction that you want to move and that you're achieving all your organizational goals, your grant goals, and anything else that you'd like to do. So, as I mentioned, the quality self-assessment tool, this is something that will be open when we all come back from Labor Day. I was saying it will be open on the 2nd, but the 2nd is Labor Day, and I don't want to work that day either. So, it'll be open on the 3rd, not the 1st either, sorry. Everything is misleading. I don't want to work that weekend either. So basically, the quality self-assessment tool looks at 4 different areas in best practices for your programs. Be Safe looks at how well trained your staff are, if your facility is safe, if everyone has the training that they need, and things along those lines.
Develop Meaningful Relationships talks about relationships between staff and youth, as well as youth and youth, your program and community partners, your program and the school that it's based in, and things along those lines. Learn New Skills talks about the learning environment that you're creating, where you're emphasizing a learning culture for both your kids and your staff and your programs. And Administration, if you're new at this, if you're not new at this, we want to help you know how to track the information, how to make sure that you're documenting things for your staff and your programs and everything there. So this is something that's intended to be done as a team, where you can basically share the quality tool with everyone that's working with you in your program, and you work together to assess the program. You get input from everybody, and then you're giving yourself scores based on how you've done in each of those indicators. And then you can take that information and areas that you feel like you have room to grow, that's where you're going to create some goals, and that's where we step in and give you support. The program information form will also be open on the 3rd, not the 1st or the 2nd. And that is a form that we use to collect information on programs all throughout the state. This is basically how we at UEN help to understand where there are gaps in coverage around the state, where there's a greater need for after-school programs, where we can see where there are a lot of really successful programs, and we can look at successful outcomes that you're all helping to create for the youth that you're serving. And we also use this form for our advocacy efforts in educating legislators, in reporting to the state, and basically helping to paint a picture of what after-school looks like in the state of Utah. So it's really important to all of us in this room, because as Camilla's mentioned, we've had federal funding for after-school programs come under threat nationally. This is great data that we're able to share to fight for these programs that you're all running. So this program will be, this form will be available for you to check out after the 1st of September, as I mentioned. And basically, you don't fill the form out. You fill it out at the end of the year after you've collected all the data that you need and everything along those lines. But it's open early, so you can look at it and make sure that you're collecting all the information that you need. So look at it early, make sure you've got the infrastructure in place to track all of those things. Otherwise, when we get to May 28th, you'll have a really bad headache because you're trying to get all of this stuff together at the last minute. And it's just not fun. Make it easy on yourself, track it all year round. Yes, Marvin?
Are the forms new this year?
There are a couple new questions that are in there and things like that. But
On your
everything
website?
else, yeah, it will be on the website. It's not live yet, but it will be live next week. That's what I've been working on over here while this has all been happening, actually. Supporting programs. So as I mentioned as well, we provide external observations. For new grantees receiving 21st Century funds, you receive a pre and a post observation using the youth or the school age program quality assessment tool. As I mentioned, this is looking at interactions between staff and youth primarily, and that's where we want to help you out, because that's really where you're making a lot of significant impacts in your program and opening a lot of doors for what youth will benefit from in your program. So in conducting these observations, our OST specialists will contact you, they will schedule the observation, they'll come in, and they'll basically observe your program for an hour or for one structured activity that could typically go from a half hour to 2 hours, depending on what your activity is. We then go back, we score that observation and look at the indicators and look at those best practices and how well they're being implemented. And then we come and meet up with you, we provide you with feedback and talk about areas for improvement, areas you're doing well and exceeding, and then we can use that information to help create those goals that we were talking about before as well. And then we can move forward on implementing changes and meeting those best practices that you'd like to have in your program. It seems like a daunting thing. It can also be weird when you have someone in your activity kind of watching your staff's every move, but it's been really beneficial. And in the last year that we were using these observations, we saw the majority of programs that received 2 or more observations saw an increase in their program quality overall. So it's a really great system. Don't be afraid of our team. Remember those smiling faces you saw in the pictures. Supporting staff. We support staff through our professional development initiatives. So we do a number of different things. In addition to our staff being able to provide you with training in your programs, we have a lot of different opportunities for things that you can go and attend. So coming up actually really soon here on September 7th, we have our Behavior Management Institute. This is an institute that focuses specifically on giving your team the tools that they need to work together to support the behavior of the youth in your programs. So basically you attended as a team, you're learning best practices, you're learning the language together, and you're learning how to implement these things. What's nice about this is our out of school time specialists actually attend it with you. We're there to talk about specific issues that you're having in your programs, and then we'll follow up after the Behavior Management Institute to talk about what you can implement and how things are going. And again, wrap all of this into your overall goals that we're supporting you with throughout the year. We do this 3 times throughout the year. We actually just added a session down in Moab. So if you want to go and have a staff retreat down there, they can show you how to have a good time and all that good stuff as well.
You can't have entertainment.
Yeah, it'll be good.
I think it's still have a good time.
We have it again in January. And something else that's nice about this is every Behavior Management Institute has sessions for both elementary and teen programs. So we're addressing all kinds of different needs in those as well. So I encourage you to check that out. Our UAN e-Learning Institute, this is our online learning module. This has a number of different platforms and programs that you can learn from. Everything ranging from basic behavior management up to managing your program. There are even different modules in there for if you want to use Google Sheets to manage attendance in your program. It can show you how to better utilize Google Sheets or Excel or Microsoft or any of those things. You can pay for those per course, which is nice, so you can pay for it for individual staff. The e-Learning Institute is a nice resource because it's great for beginning of the year onboarding, which you're all doing right now, but it's also nice for as you're going throughout the year. We all unfortunately suffer from high turnover in our after-school programs, and so it's likely that you'll have someone that you're randomly onboarding in the middle of March or something like that when you're already in everything. This is a nice thing to be able to share with those employees so that they're getting all the tools and resources that maybe they didn't have a chance to get at the beginning of the year or if they missed out on one of our other conferences. So our other conferences, one last thing with this too, our e-Learning Institute also counts for a professional learning incentive that I'll talk about in a moment here, where you can receive a financial incentive for your professional development. We have a few conferences that we offer throughout the year. In November, we have the Jumpstart Conference. That will be the 1st and 2nd of November. It will take place in Ogden. We have a number of different workshops that go from line staff up to coordinators or grant admins, stuff that's relevant there in a number of different arenas. We really encourage you to check that out. Registration is open for that right now. We also have Southern and Northern Recharge that will happen in February. And that's just it. Similar to Jumpstart on a smaller scale, but we have it one available down in St. George and one in northern Utah that happens here in Salt Lake. So you can find all of this information on our website as well and register. There are scholarships, there are travel opportunities to help you pay for hotels or reimburse for travel and things along those lines. So we try to make this as attainable as possible. I felt funny because I've had this picture up and she's in the back over there now. So the Utah After School Professional Development Incentive. Sorry. As I mentioned before, this is a financial incentive to encourage you and your staff to get additional training in everything that you're doing there. So the Jumpstart Conference, the Recharge Conferences, the Behavior Management Institute, other trainings that you're able to go to, all qualify for this. And the training that you're receiving to receive this incentive can also be applied towards requirements for training for USPE or DWS if you have funds through those guys as well. So it's all connected, it all goes together, and it all hopefully ends up with a little bit of extra money in yours or your staff's pocket. So basically the biggest thing with this is to look into it now and start tracking all of your training for your entire team right now, because typically the biggest obstacle for being able to receive this is not tracking everything. For this, there is one caveat in that your program has to be registered with the Department of Workforce Services. So if you're receiving funding from the Department of Workforce Services, this is something that can apply to you, and if not, then it's something that we're exploring for the future. And I'm sorry we don't have it right now for you. Regional networks. All right, so at the Utah After School Network, we're based here in Salt Lake City, but we serve programs all throughout the state. it's really hard for us to make sure that we have a dial on what exactly the needs are and what is happening in all the various communities all throughout the state. So we've started convening these regional networks where it's basically an opportunity for you to work together with your peers and your colleagues on common interests. So if you have policy issues that you'd like to address, or training issues, or staffing issues, or you want to just talk to somebody about what you're doing for your family engagement and just bounce some ideas around, the regional network is a really nice opportunity for you to get together to do this. This is not anything that is a requirement of the grant. It's really just an opportunity for you guys to get together and to talk to somebody. I know when I was running programs, there were a lot of times that I felt kind of siloed or kind of alone, and that I didn't have any other people that I could really bounce ideas off of or talk to or find out what they're doing for different things. So you can talk to your out-of-school time specialist or go to our website to find out who you can talk to about when your regional network is getting together. Some of these regional networks, like Southwest Network and the Southeast Network, we're still working to get those more off the ground. So if you're really interested in helping to move one of these along or get involved in leading one, talk to us, and we'd love to get you that opportunity.
Can I put in just want to do a quick shout out. The Salt Lake Regional Network's kickoff meeting is next Thursday on September 5th. It's from 10 to noon at the Swanson Center. And I've just named it the 2.0 version. So we've passed over leadership to Liz Rich over at Youth City, and she's bringing some really great changes. So even if you have come in the past and maybe stopped coming, it's going to look very, very different. So this is going to be the first meeting, and I just really encourage everyone to come out and check it out. It's a really great place just to network and get some resources and feel like you're not alone. So if you are not on that email list or haven't seen information, come talk to me and I'll forward the invite to you.
They're really fun, informal meetings, and it's, like I said, it's really nice to get together and to work with your peers in the field to learn about what they're doing and everything too. So thank you, Danielle. Supporting after school. UAN is also, as I mentioned, an advocacy organization, and so we take a lot of effort to make sure that we're educating our policymakers on the benefits of after school programs. This is especially important right now with a lot of threats that have come down the pipeline towards after school funding. And so you can expect to hear from us in that regard. We send out calls to action, so if there's something that we hear about that needs action, if we want to get the word out, to contact your representatives and let them know that you're working in a program that has benefits or things along those lines, then we'll send that out. We're also on our website, we have a number of different policy efforts that are in place there. You can look at that to find out about how you can get involved. There are talking points and resources, there are email templates, there are telephone call templates that you can use to help guide you through a call with a representative if you want to do that as well. We also put on an event called After School Day on the Hill, where we invite you to join us up during the legislative session to go and meet with your representatives and talk to them about your program specifically. And Kelly and I also typically attend what is called the After School for All Challenge, where we go to DC and we talk to our federal representatives there about your programs. And we try to bring some people from programs to tag along to actually talk about the impacts that you're having in programs as well. We have a few national advocacy days, Lights On After School and Summer Learning Day. You're all probably aware of those, where you're putting on events to promote after school programming. Lights On After School will be October 24th this year, and we're excited to see what everyone pulls out for that. Lastly, our State of After School Programs in Utah report is something that we put together over the last year that is a really amazing document that pulls from a lot of local research, from information and activities that are taking place specifically in the state of Utah. So looking at outcomes and how after school programs are related to academic success and other areas of success for youth. It's a great document for you to share if you're advocating for your program, if you're building relationships in your community or things along those lines. It's also great for you to share with your team so they can just get an idea of the scope of after school programs in the state and everything that's happening there that we all get to be a part of. It's something that we have for free, available on our website. We do have some physical copies, so if you're having a really big meeting that you'd like some physical copies for, you can get in touch with us and request those, and we're happy to hand them out. We just don't give them out a ton because they're on nice, glossy, thick paper, and they're expensive to put together, and we don't charge you for them. So please request them sparingly and print them out on your own glossy paper. This is our website. Everything that I've talked about today is on our website, utahafterschool.org. Some other really great resources that are here. A job board. Some of you may still be trying to fill positions right now. You can post those positions on our job board. A brand new resource that we just added this year as well is a searchable resource library. So you could just type in a specific keyword, STEM, and you'll get all the STEM resources that we have in our resource library, or prevention, or something along those lines. And you'll see everything that we have there. If you get into our resource library and there's something that you're aware of that we don't have up yet, share that with us. We want to make it as big as we possibly can. So get onto our website, check a few things out, poke around, have a good time. We put a lot of work into it, so enjoy it. And this is us. Our contact information. You can email us at info@utahafterschool.org. You should all actually be hearing from your out-of-school time specialist within the next couple weeks as well, where they'll be laying out how they'll be working with you for the year. Any questions about UAN? Yes.
I just had a question. Do you guys have a date for the after school day on the Hill yet?
We do not yet, but we'll make sure that everybody is aware of it. Yeah.
So I just wanted to make an announcement. So I was recently awarded the Utah After School Ambassador Alliance position for Utah. So I will be doing a lot of promotion for Lights On and the After School for All Challenge. So if you guys have any Lights On events that you guys would like to be publicized, I'll be working to publicize Promises events, and I would be happy to work with you guys to publicize yours. So let me know.
Thank you very much. Congratulations. All right. See you later. Thank you.
One more thing before I end. In all of my excitement to talk about allowable and unallowable costs, I skipped over program. It is here somewhere. Maybe I deleted it, but so any family who cannot afford, so you need to have a sliding fee scale. But for families that can't afford even the lowest option or application fee or whatever it is, you need to have a free option. And so what are program fees? If you collect program fees, those are income, and we need to report that. We have a waiver from our federal partners for programs to collect program income, which includes program fees. So you'll need to report that. So there's a Google form that I emailed out with the continuation application that everyone needs to do. If you don't collect program income or program fees, so program income could also include if you had a bake sale, you bought the supplies with 21st Century funding and you made money from that bake sale. You need to reinvest it back into the program, but you need to report that as program income. So fees comes up because that is a hot button topic, hot issue. I don't know what, but it's popular right now. So you need to have a free option, but additionally, program fees are income. So you need to fill out this form to declare whatever you're doing so I know, and then you'll need to report your program income some way in Utah Grant. So we'll likely have maybe 2 times a year where we'll ask you when I come out and visit to monitor, I'll say, how are you collecting program income, including program fees, and I'll ask how you're tracking it. We might have you submit documentation in Utah Grants. We like to submit things in Utah Grants because it's always there, even if I go away when I win the lottery. So it's always there. So that's why I keep saying Utah Grants. Any questions about program income, including program fees?
Just one comment, if you have fees, you must advertise that you have a free option. It has to be advertised.
Somehow I must have deleted So that's all I have for you today. Please, if you have questions about anything we've discussed today, I know it's been a long meeting, but I wanted to give you the information up front, especially around the not so exciting topics of time and effort, program income, including program fees. But I want everyone to start off the year right. So if things do come up, we have a basis to talk about it. So thank you all for coming, and be in touch with any questions you might have.
Hi, how are you? Nice to meet you.
Oh, you're professional.
I was gonna tell
Introduce you, this is Pete.